Hey, what's up? Hello, my name is Emma, and today I'm going to be telling you about my most anticipated book releases for the rest of 2018. Every January, I like to make a video talking about some of the new releases that will be out in the upcoming year. But this year, there are just so many coming out in the second half of the year that I either was not excited for at the beginning of the year or only recently found out about that I just had to talk about today. As a note, this video is being sponsored by HMH Teen, but we will talk about them a little bit later as I'm going to go in publication order talking about what books are coming out first. Coming out on September 4th, we have Two Dark Reigns, which is the third installment in the Three Dark Crown series by Kendara Blake. A lot of books that I'm going to be talking about are sequels, so I will be giving you a synopsis of just the first book to keep things spoiler-free. If you don't know what Three Dark Crowns is about, it takes place on this magical, mystical island where every generation a group of triplets are born, and each of them has different magical powers. One has power over the elements, one has power over nature, and one has power over poison. And on their 16th birthday, they are set to compete to the death so that one can get to the crown. If you've been following my channel earlier this year, you might know that I struggled a lot with the first book in the Three Dark Crown series because everything I wanted from book one and what I was expecting ended up being the perfect execution of it in book two. So I'm really excited to see where book three goes. So much has happened in the second book, and I can't wait to see how things are resolved. Coming out on September 18th, we have Wild Card by Marie Lu, which is the sequel to Warcross. Warcross was one of my absolute favorite reads of 2017. It is this spectacular, speculative YA science fiction novel that I cannot recommend enough. Warcross takes place in a very near future where virtual reality has completely changed the structure of society. So people use it all day long in their everyday lives, but there is also this international phenomenon game called Warcross. Our main character's name is Amika, and she is a Chinese-American girl struggling to make ends meet as a bounty hunter for those who are illegally betting on Warcross. And so one day she accidentally glitches herself into the opening ceremony of this year's Warcross games, and as a result she thinks that she is going to be executed immediately because she has broken so many laws. But the creator of Warcross actually invites her to Tokyo to compete as a player in this year's Warcross games. While Amika does become an overnight celebrity as a new Warcross player, the entire point of her being in Tokyo is that Hideo Tanaka, the creator, has hired her to investigate some shady goings-on underneath the underworld of Warcross and to find out something that is really dangerous that's potentially happening. Warcross is amazing in my opinion. It is an edge of your seat, cannot put the book down sort of read. I definitely think if you have not read Warcross yet, you should absolutely pick it up before the release of Wild Card this September. Closing out my list of most anticipated September reads, we have Wondersmith, The Calling of Morgan Crow by Jessica Townsend, which comes out on September 25th. I finished the first book, Nevermore, The Trials of Morgan Crow, just a few days ago at this point, and I am helplessly in love with this story. Nevermore is a middle grade fantasy story following a girl named Morgan Crow who has lived her entire life believing she is cursed. Everything bad that happens to her and to other people in her town is her fault, and on top of that, she is set to die on her 11th birthday. On the presumed night of her death, she is being hunted by the shadowy figures when a man named Jupiter rescues her and takes her to this world called Nevermore, where children compete in 4 different trials to gain entry to the Wondrous Society. So it is all about Morgan competing in these difficult trials, trying to prove her worth not only to the Wondrous Society, but to herself as well, and trying to make a better life for herself in this new world that she had no idea she could be a part of. Nevermore was just so charming and enchanting. I loved absolutely every second of this book. I listened to the audiobook and there wasn't a moment where I didn't have a smile on my face while reading. It is the first book ever to give me true, honest Harry Potter vibes while also standing on its own as a really complex, wonderful fantasy story. If you have not read Nevermore yet, I would really recommend it, and then you can be ready for the release of Wondersmith, which I am so pumped for. Coming out on October 2nd, we have Grim Lovelyz by Megan Shepherd. So again, thank you so much to HMH Teen for sponsoring this video and sending me a copy. Grim Lovelyz is the start to a new urban fantasy story that takes place in Paris. It follows a girl named Anouk who has been transformed from animal to human and is the servant of a person named Madame Vitra. But things change when Madame Vitra is murdered, and Anouk, as well as the rest of the changelings that were tied to her dark magic, are restored and they only have 3 days to save their humanity forever. As it turns out, the abilities of the beasties, as they're called, are much more dangerous than they originally realized, and every magic handler in Paris is after them. I'm really excited for this book, particularly because it's been pitched to me as being similar to the Mortal Instruments series, which y'all know is my favorite in the entire world. There are different groups of mythical, magical beings in this story, and I feel like it's really representative of like all the things I love in urban fantasy, so I'm very, very excited for it. It sounds like the perfect mesh of dark and whimsical, and I'm just really in the mood for some new urban fantasy stories in my life, so I cannot wait to read it. My next most anticipated release also comes out on October 2nd, and that is Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor. If you told 2017 Emma that Muse of Nightmares would be on my most anticipated list for the rest of the year, I would laugh in your face. Many of you know I harbored a severe intimidation of Strange the Dreamer up until recently because it is just so far off what I typically like to read, and I thought there was no way for me to enjoy it, but I did read it a month ago and I was totally wrong. I loved it so much. It definitely challenged me as a reader in the best way, and I became so enchanted by the story. It really took up all of my heart, and I cannot wait to read the sequel, and I believe it is the final book in this duology. I definitely do not have the best synopsis of Strange the Dreamer, but it basically follows a boy named Laszlo who works as a librarian, but his dream in life has been to discover this lost city called Weep. To Laszlo's surprise, he gets the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to travel to Weep with a group of people in order to uncover some of its more dark secrets, and it is just absolutely amazing. I really want to get to reading Muse of Nightmares very soon because the story of Strange the Dreamer is so fresh in my head, and I am just like, I need to read you now. But I'm really excited, like I know many of you are, and I'm so happy I read Strange the Dreamer this year right in time for its sequel's release. My bank account is going to be crying the first week of October because the next book on my list of most anticipated releases for the rest of the year also comes out on October 2nd, and it is Saltkill Girls by Claire Legrand. Now, I don't know much about Saltkill Girls. It is one of those books that has a very vague synopsis, which I sometimes feel are like the best books. It takes place on this island called Saltkill Rock, where young girls have been disappearing for centuries with no bodies to be found. There is this local legend about a beast that eats these girls, and so it follows 3 girls, 3 teens who apparently have the power to save the island if only they can come together. From what I hear, it's also a very diverse read. We have one character who is Black, biromantic, and asexual. We have another character who is plus size and also has an interest in girls, and she starts a relationship with a girl throughout the story. And then we have one more main character who also has an attraction to both men and women. And so I'm just really excited for this book. I've heard nothing but rave reviews from people who got arcs of this book. I've met Claire Legrand quite a few times. I haven't read any of her books yet, but I know that people just love her fantasy books because Furyborn itself has gotten so much hype, and I cannot wait for Saltkill Girls. Apparently, I have another book on my list that comes out on October 2nd. I don't think I have ever had a year where 4 books that I wanted to read came out on the same day. This is like a record. But the next book is The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy by Mackenzie Lee. This is the sequel to The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, which is a book I read, I believe, last year, and I really, really loved it. The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue is a hilarious historical fiction novel following a boy named Monty who is going off on a grand tour of Europe before he has to stay at home for the rest of his life and take over his father's estate. Monty's companions for this grand tour are his sister named Felicity, who is really interested in science and medicine, as well as his best friend named Percy, whom he also happens to be in love with. Percy is also Black and has epilepsy, and I believe the sequel, The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy, also features an asexual and potentially a romantic main character. I am definitely not a historical fiction reader. If I see that a book is historical fiction, I'm like immediately turned off for it. Those sort of books just don't coincide with my brain, but I loved The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue so much. It's so funny, it's so entertaining, it is a much more adventurous and thrilling than I expected, and I really cannot wait for the sequel. The next book on my list comes out on October 9th, and it is actually one I have already read. That is What If It's Us by Adam Silvera and Becky Albertalli. This is the young adult contemporary duo novel that we have been waiting for and that we deserve. What If It's Us follows 2 boys, Arthur, who has anxiety and ADHD and is living in New York for the summer to intern at his mother's law firm, and Ben, who is Puerto Rican and has just gone through a really terrible breakup with his first real boyfriend. ex-boyfriend. Arthur and Ben meet for the first time at the post office, where Ben is trying to mail back his ex-boyfriend's things, and from there they separate, never to be seen again, just one of those random interactions with a stranger, but they do find their way back to each other and end up going on a series of failed first dates. I really loved my time reading What If It's Us. It is just a cutesy, contemporary, fluffy story about two boys who are potentially falling in love. We don't really know yet. You gotta read the book to find out. As this is the one book in this video that I have read already, I will say I do have one critique about the book, that I felt it was a little bit predictable. I was kind of wishing some of the events would have pushed the boundaries as to what's to be expected in YA, but it was great. I could not put this book down at all. I read like the second half in one sitting. It was so good, and I would definitely recommend it, and I can't wait for it to be out in the world for all of you to read. Coming out on October 16th, we have A Very Large Expansive Sea by Tahara Mafi, which is her first contemporary novel following a Muslim girl named Shireen the year after 9/11. As a result of the Islamophobia following the events of 9/11, Shireen has really kept her guard up since she is not able to connect with people because she has just faced so much physical and emotional violence towards herself because of her religion and race. The one thing that keeps her going is listening to music and break dancing with her brother, but there is a boy that enters her life named Ocean, and he seems to be the first person that she's met in a very long time that actually wants to get to know her. So it is all about letting herself trust in someone new for the very first time and growing as a person from all these experiences, and I'm so excited for it. I loved Shatter Me so much when I read it. I also really enjoyed Furthermore, and so I have nothing but the highest of all hopes for her first own voices contemporary novel. I know it's going to be amazing, and I cannot wait. My final book for October releases that I am very excited for is That Night by Amy Giles, which comes out on October 23rd. I read Amy Giles' debut novel, Now Is Everything, earlier this year, which is a really emotional story about abuse, and I loved it so much, so when I found out she was writing a book about the after effects of a mass shooting, I just had to put it on my must-read TBR for the rest of this year. 1 year after the shooting, That Night follows two teens named Lucas and Jess. Now, Lucas has taken up boxing as an outlet for his guilt, in which he feels that the universe has taken his wrong brother in this shooting, and it also follows Jess, who has a depressed mother and is struggling to make ends meet after the death of her brother as well during this shooting. Jess and Lucas's paths cross as they are both working the same after-school job, and it appears to be just another really moving tale about working through trauma, understanding grief and loss, and talking about a really serious issue like gun violence and the consequences of it. And I'm getting chills just thinking about it. It sounds so great. I love how Amy Giles handled the topic of spousal and child abuse in Now Is Everything, and I just cannot wait to see what she does with another really emotional contemporary. Moving on to the one November book I have, I would honestly consider this one of my absolute most anticipated reads of the year, and that is Arch Enemies by Marissa Meyer, which is the sequel to Renegades, and it comes out on November 6th. I read Renegades earlier this year, and oh my god, am I in love with it. I would consider Renegades probably to be my absolute favorite of the year thus far, and man, does it leave off where I need a sequel. Renegades takes place in this science fiction world where people with superpowers have been oppressed for many years. There is a state of anarchy where they are rebelling against the government, and at the start of the story, we have this group of people called the Renegades, who are basically like the police officers of this superpowered world. Renegades follows two main characters, Nova, who is half Italian, half Filipina, and not only has the ability to never need to sleep, but also has the ability to put people to sleep, and she is an anarchist. But we also follow Adrian, who is the son of the heads of the Renegades, and has the ability to draw whatever he wants and have it come to life. But in addition to that, he's also a sort of vigilante superhero, stopping crime by his own rules. And so Nova ends up entering the Renegades undercover in the hopes of bringing it down from within and assassinating both of Adrian's dads. Renegades is an absolutely amazing, diverse science fiction novel. It is so complex and unique. I've never read anything like it. It has one of the best romances in YA at the moment. I am just so obsessed with Renegades. I need Arch Enemies in my hands right now because I need to know where things go. And moving on to my final book on this list, which I'm sure you guys can assume is my most anticipated read of the year, which is Queen of Air and Darkness by Cassandra Clare. This is the third and final installment in the Dark Artifices series, and oh my god, I am just so not ready. Because the start of the Dark Artifices is so deep into the Shadowhunter world, I feel like I can't even really give you a synopsis, but honestly, if this is not the first video you've watched of mine, you probably already know what the Dark Artifices is about. Lord of Shadows destroyed me and everything I own, and I'm so ready for it to happen again in Queen of Air and Darkness. Since before, I think even Lady Midnight was published, Cassandra Clare was talking about how at the end of this series, Queen of Air and Darkness is going to change the Shadowhunter world forever, and I just need to know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Who's gonna die? Who's gonna stay alive? I'm not ready. I'm so not ready, but I'm also so ready because I need it now. Wow, I'm rambling because I just don't even know how to process all my feelings for Queen of Air and Darkness. It's fine. So that concludes my list of most anticipated releases for the rest of the year. I'm super happy I made another one of these because seriously, there are just so many good books coming out for the rest of the year. I can't even contain my excitement. In the comments below, definitely let me know what are some of your most anticipated releases for the rest of the year, because I would love to know. I'm always looking for new recommendations. But that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you soon for a new video. Bye!